And we're back with Congressman Steve Pearce, Republican of New Mexico, the 2nd District in that state. And you were the feature of a front-page article in the Wall Street Journal recently. One GOP lawmaker shows how to woo Latino voters. What's your attraction to Hispanic voters in your district?
Well, we don't set out, I think, to attract voters per se. We just do our job, and that requires going into areas that typically Republicans have not gone, into the poorer neighborhoods, into the Hispanic neighborhoods. We've got some communities that are probably 85% Hispanic. When LULAC calls and asks if I'll be on their panels, take questions, I do. And so it's just me doing my job, frankly.
Well, here is the Washington Times this morning with the headline after the RNC put out their report, the postmortem on the 2012 election. Hispanic vote key to Republicans to win elections. And in this report, it said Republicans need to vote for, come up with some sort of plan, comprehensive immigration reform. People assume that means a pathway to citizenship. Do you agree with a pathway to citizenship?
Well, first of all, let's back up and take the bigger question. Is that going to be the future? If we do that, I don't think it'll get us one Hispanic vote. In other words, the Hispanic voters are no different than any others. They're not driven just by simply how we vote on immigration. So I think that maybe we still are not getting it right. The pathway to citizenship is very problematic. I live on the southern border. I represent that. If you encourage people to come here without documentation illegally, and then you give them citizenship, who wouldn't do that? Who would not want to do it? So my belief is that a guest worker program with the thumbprint, retina scan, allow you to go back and forth pretty easily is far better. I've got a friend who just was telling me this last week. He runs a dairy in eastern New Mexico. His top manager would have been, or he came under the amnesty under President Reagan, and that was 1986. And they asked him just a couple of weeks ago, "Did you ever get that citizenship?" "Nah," he said, "I'm just here to work for my family." He said, "I was never here for the citizenship." So I think that the pathway to citizenship is way overblown. And again, what I think we're going to do is rush down that alley saying, okay, this is the key to Hispanic votes. No, the key to Hispanic votes is working hard in their community, just like you do any other community.
Some Republicans have said, though, that if you say to Hispanics, quote, "we don't want you here," then they stop by not agreeing to a pathway to citizenship. Then they stop listening to you about your policy, your ideas for education, for the budget, for taxes, etc.
What I hear from Hispanics who live on the border is that, wait, we came here legally, we waited 18 or 20 years, and you're going to move these people ahead of us? Just visited with a friend of mine who works immigration. She worked for me in my office in the first 6 years. She said, this is a very dangerous path you're on. She herself is a legalized citizen. She did most of her immigration work, and now then for $150, she's doing what lawyers do for $5,000. So she gets lots of cases, and she said, you can't put people who came here without following the law ahead of people who are waiting 18 to 20 years in their countries. Again, the Hispanic community is very divided on this, as every community is. It's just something America is struggling with.
So what is the Hispanic community then in your district telling you about what they would like to see? I mean, what is important to them?
It's a very broad range of opinions, but many just want the law to be followed. They've got family members, maybe their uncle, their aunt, or sister, who are waiting in their home country. And again, the process is sometimes 18 to 20 years with congressional help. And so they're saying what we really need to do is reform legal immigration to where we could get an answer within a year. I was recently in a group, and I know that there were people who were either friends or maybe themselves here without documentation. I was doing a town hall. I just asked the question, how many of you know somebody here without papers? And almost every hand went up. And I said, now, of those people who came here, how many would have accepted no for an answer if they could have gotten it within a reasonable time? And almost every hand went up. The point is that people are waiting in line. They'll take yes or no, but what they do is they feel very foolish because they're waiting 18 years. They see their neighbor pay $5,000, come here, raise their family, and they're back home. before they've ever gotten an answer. I think that's the piece we really need to work on, is the legal process.
Well, Rand Paul is expected to say today in his speech before the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Congress that he could support a path to citizenship for illegal immigrants. Inside this Associated Press piece this morning, they report that he, like the Senate group, that so-called group of Gang of Eight, wants the borders secured first. Then, in year 2 of his plan, illegal immigrants would begin to be issued temporary work visas and would have to wait in line behind those already in the system before moving forward toward citizenship. A bipartisan panel would determine the number of visas per year. High-tech visas would be expanded and a special visa for entrepreneurs would be issued. Is this something that you could see yourself supporting?
Again, think of the dynamics. We're going to let you work here while you wait to get to the front of the line. Who would not want to come here and work here in the country and get to the front of the line? I'm just saying that if you will never secure the border if you don't have a process that separates the people who just want to work and improve things for their family, and this nation definitely needs that. Who is going to wait in their country for 18 years if they could pay someone, come here and start working? I'm just telling you, if we can't pull that pressure off of the border, then we're never going to secure it.
All right, well, we're taking phone calls for Congressman Steve Pearce. Anthony in Washington, D.C., Democratic caller. Go ahead.
Yes, good morning, Representative. Good morning, Crowder.
Morning.
Good morning.
You know, it seems almost though we're trying to sell citizenships. And I have a problem with that because when you come in this country, you shall love this country. You still there?
Yeah, we're listening.
Oh, okay. You should love this country and willing to fight for it, willing to die for it. But it's almost like we selling citizenships because people want to come here and make money. Make money, then send the money back home, or eventually they go back home. I've heard people say that myself, that I'm just here until I can get enough money, go back home, build my house, and that's it. And that's a big problem. We have to look at it a little different.
I don't disagree with Anthony at all, and I hear that frequently. Again, we represent the border. I'm down there a lot. I talk to people in town halls, and I hear the same thing. I don't want to be a citizen here, they say. I just came here to get self-sufficiency. And the one guy even described self-sufficiency: when I can get enough money to buy a cow and a goat back in my home, then I got milk for my kids. And so it's this sort of pragmatic thing. Again, the story of the man that's managing the dairy for my friend. He's been here since 1986 and still hasn't applied for citizenship. I don't think where Anthony, I probably don't agree exactly. I don't know that we're just trying to sell this, the citizenship to the country. I do agree with him that people who come here should have an allegiance to the country, but very interesting comments.
Jerry in Detroit, Michigan, Democratic caller.
Good morning, Greta.
Hi, Jerry.
Good morning.
All right. I'm a 47-year-old African American, and you know, judging from the you know, like if you recall last year that when Mitt Romney, while he was running, you know, was trying to sell white conservatism to African Americans when he spoke before the NAACP, and I was wanting to ask the congressman if he thinks that that somehow through this effort that somehow white conservatives could relate to people of color. And I doubt that Rent's previous this go around will try to sell the idea of white conservatism to minorities.
I don't know exactly what you'd be calling white conservatism. I run into a lot of people in the African American community who want lower deficits. They also are concerned about national security. So the conservative elements don't just stop with the whites or the blacks or anyone. Again, I think my main job is to represent my constituents, and in doing that, if I talk to everyone, I find that it's not so much about policies, philosophies, theologies. It's about just trying to understand what people's problems are today and seeing if we can work our way through them. That begins to me to be a more compelling thing than being out in a philosophical drive to convert people to be conservatives or whatever. Again, my district's 34% Republican. I represent 2 non-Republicans for every Republican I represent, and so we have a very broad base. I think one of the most important things we can do is balance out those voters in every district. The 70% districts, they're never going to have to work very hard. I have to work very hard, and frankly, I like that, and I think that's what we're called to do. But I don't work on just, here's my policies, and I've got to convince you all to believe them. I just get out into the communities and see what we can do to help that community.
How many miles do you log, do you think, a month or in a year?
We just generally hit pretty close to 100,000. That's just in the car, and that's just in one car. In other words, we don't track when I'm in 3 or 4 cars during a period, but easily over 100,000 miles. And then it takes 9 hours for me generally to get back into the district when I leave here.
So is that 100,000 miles a year or a month or what?
A year. I'm sorry, yeah, 100,000 a month. That's a big deal.
That would be
but that's about a year.
Okay.
So we go home on the 3-day weekends. We'll generally make about 1,000 miles, do 20 events or something. It's just frequent. And the 10-day breaks, it's closer to 2,500 miles. We've just got a big district, and so we work it.
What's the breakdown of Hispanic voters in your district?
52% Hispanic.
52% Hispanic. And of that percentage, what have you gotten in the past?
Just in this last election, we got about 42%, and Mitt Romney was at 22%. And we kept visiting with him, like the article said. Sir, please start engaging the Hispanic voters. They just want to know that you care about the issues that face them.
In the Wall Street Journal article that features you, you say you've been kept out of immigration talks, that the Speaker, John Boehner, has kept you out of those talks. Why?
That was listed in the article as a complaint. I don't complain much. I just take my lot in life, and I'm satisfied with it. I am not in the talks. Don't know exactly why. I don't know if I'm being kept out. But as the only Republican on the southern border, seems like at some point that we'd be there. I basically don't ask those kind of questions to our leadership, though.
The Wall Street Journal says is it due to the fact that you voted against the Speaker for re-election to that post?
Yeah, I mean, I would suspect so, but I don't. I've never asked the Speaker. Again, he didn't talk to me much about the vote. I didn't go and offer much about the vote. I didn't even talk to staff prior to that casting that vote. It's a very internal things for me. Just try to figure out the best possible course forward for me.
Why'd you vote against him?
Just felt like as a catcher in baseball, I was always telling the coach, hey, our pitcher's fastball is not working. He's getting hit every time, so let's get a different pitcher. So I went to the second pitcher in our rotation. It wasn't a protest vote. It was just saying we're not getting the batters out very often.
What issues, though, specifically?
Debt and deficit. That's the one where I think that we have not represented ourselves very well. It's the one that threatens the future of the country. The debt and the deficit, that whole fiscal cliff right at the end of the year, I voted against the solution because I said, you're going to see the headlines tomorrow, and it's going to say, the fiscal cliff is avoided. There were 3 elements to the fiscal cliff, and we didn't avoid any of them. We raised taxes on every American. We scooted sequestration down the road 60 or 90 days, and we did 0 about the looming debt and deficit problems. I will tell you that we're facing total economic chaos if we're not very careful.